Jane sat back, rubbing her temples as the error message blinked mockingly on her screen. Again, her internet had dropped out, right in the midst of a crucial client revision that was due by the end of the day. With each minute that passed, her stress escalated. Her career as a freelance web designer hinged on meeting deadlines and delivering quality work, and every interruption not only set her back, but also risked her professional reputation. She had moved into this new apartment with the hope of a fresh start, a space that would inspire creativity, not stifle it with unreliable internet. The first few instances she had brushed off as minor hiccups, common in a new setup. But now, as the disruptions became more frequent, her initial annoyance turned into genuine concern. Determined to resolve the issue once and for all, Jane reached for her phone, her fingers tapping with a nervous energy. She dialed the number of her internet service provider, rehearsing her complaint as she waited for someone to answer. "Good morning, this is Jane Harper. I'm calling because my internet connection keeps dropping and it's critically affecting my work. I need this resolved today," she explained with a mix of politeness and urgency. The person on the other end of the line was sympathetic but reserved, a tone Jane was all too familiar with. "We're really sorry for the inconvenience, Miss Harper. We can send a technician first thing tomorrow morning. Would that be okay?" the customer service rep offered. "Tomorrow morning?" The thought made Jane's heart sink. Another day lost could mean missing her deadline, and in her line of work, deadlines were sacrosanct. She pressed, explaining the urgency of her situation, hoping for a quicker solution. After a few moments, which felt like hours, the representative came back on the line. "We can have someone there by 8 a.m. tomorrow. That's the best we can do under the circumstances." Reluctantly, Jane agreed, jotting down the appointment time. Hanging up, she felt a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. The promise of a fixed connection was comforting, yet the lost time was irreplaceable. She glanced at her laptop, the screen still displaying the error message, a stark reminder of her current predicament. With no other choice, she decided to make the best of the situation, planning tasks that didn't require an internet connection, like sketching initial design ideas on paper and organizing her invoices. As the day wore on, Jane's frustration slowly gave way to a resigned acceptance. She realized that sometimes, despite best efforts, things were out of her control, and adapting was the only way forward. This unexpected interruption, though unwelcome, forced her to step back and reassess her workflow, finding gaps that she might have otherwise overlooked. With tomorrow's early appointment looming, Jane prepared her studio, ensuring that everything was in order for the technician's visit. She hoped that this would be the end of her internet woes, unaware of just how significant the technician's visit would turn out to be, not just for her internet connection, but for her personal life as well. The morning sun barely peeked through the clouds as Jane heard a knock at her door. Right on time, she thought, a small comfort on what had been a string of frustrating days. Opening the door, she was greeted by Alex, standing with a tool bag in hand and a warm smile that seemed to ease some of her anxiety. "Morning, I'm Alex. I'm here to look at your internet issue," he introduced himself, stepping into the apartment with a professionalism that Jane appreciated. As he set down his equipment, Alex began to ask questions about the problems she had been experiencing. "How often does your connection drop?" he inquired, pulling out various tools from his bag. Jane explained the frequency and unpredictability of the issue, leading him to nod thoughtfully. "Let's see if we can get to the bottom of this," he said, his tone reassuring. While Alex examined the router and checked the wall connections, Jane returned to her makeshift workspace in the living room. Her laptop screen displayed the paused designs she had been working on. Seeing her setup, Alex couldn't help but ask about her work. "You're a web designer?" he asked, glancing over her open projects with genuine interest. Jane, a bit surprised by his curiosity, found herself explaining her freelance career, discussing the types of projects she worked on and the clients she designed for. The conversation naturally drifted towards Alex's experiences with other customers, some of whom had similar setups and depended heavily on stable internet connections for their livelihoods. You'd be surprised how common this issue is, especially in apartments like these. But don't worry, we'll sort it out, Alex reassured her, his confidence comforting. As he moved around, testing different connections and making adjustments, Jane tried to refocus on her work, but found herself intrigued by Alex's methodical approach to troubleshooting. It wasn't just his technical skills that caught her attention. It was his calm demeanour and the easy way he communicated what he was doing. Every so often he would explain a step in the process, ensuring she understood what was happening and why. It was a level of engagement that Jane hadn't expected but greatly appreciated. At one point, Alex had to reset the network configurations on her laptop. "May I?" he asked, gesturing towards her device. Jane nodded, sliding the laptop toward him. As he worked on her machine, their conversation deepened, touching on the challenges and rewards of working with technology. Alex shared a story about a particularly challenging service call that turned out to be a simple case of a disconnected cable, making Jane laugh with his humorous recounting of the client's reaction. As the diagnostics ran on her system, Jane realized how comfortable she felt with Alex being there. It was rare for her to warm up so quickly to someone, but Alex's friendly and open nature made it easy. He wasn't just a technician, he was someone who seemed to truly care about making her day better. Not only was he fixing her internet connection, but he was also, in a way, reconnecting her to the world, both digitally and through simple human interaction, something she hadn't realized she'd been missing. As the screen flickered back to life, signaling progress in Alex's work, their conversation began to flow more naturally. Alex shared that he originally studied computer science with a focus on network security, but found that working directly with clients in their homes provided a more rewarding experience. His passion for technology was evident not only in his work, but also in how enthusiastically he spoke about the latest advancements in the field. Tech is constantly changing, which keeps things interesting. There's always something new to learn, Alex explained, his eyes lighting up with each technical detail he described. Jane found herself drawn into his world, appreciating the complexity and beauty of technology in ways she hadn't considered before. His ability to articulate complicated concepts in an accessible manner was both impressive and enlightening. As he adjusted the settings on her router, their conversation shifted to digital art, sparked by a graphic design book Jane had left on her coffee table. "I've always been fascinated by digital art. It's amazing how artists can turn code into something visually stunning," Alex commented, nodding toward her book. Jane, pleased by his interest, shared her experience with digital art, from her early days experimenting in college to some of her recent projects. "There's something magical about bringing a piece of art to life from just a concept. It's not that different from what you do, solving problems and creating solutions," she reflected, finding a common thread between their professions. Alex smiled, appreciating the comparison. "I guess both involve creativity and precision, and a lot of patience," he added, which made Jane laugh. Their mutual understanding deepened, bridging the gap between the technical and the artistic, highlighting the creativity that underpinned both their fields. Their discussion ventured into the evolution of technology and art, exploring how the digital age had transformed traditional media and created new platforms for artists and technicians alike to express themselves. Jane talked about a recent project where she collaborated with a programmer to create an interactive web design that allowed users to engage with the artwork in innovative ways. I love that technology can be interactive like that. It's not just about consumption, but engagement, making the user part of the art, Alex said, clearly intrigued. His perspective added a new layer to Jane's appreciation of her projects, reinforcing the collaborative potential between technology and art. As Alex wrapped up his work, securing the last of the cables and making final adjustments to her network, Jane realized how much she had enjoyed their conversation. It was rare for her to discuss her work so candidly with someone who could both understand the technical challenges and appreciate the artistic aspects. Alex's visit had not only resolved her internet issues, but had also rekindled her enthusiasm for her own work, reminding her of the intricate connection between technology and art. Their shared interests and the easy rapport that had developed suggested the beginning of a promising new connection, one that might extend beyond the confines of a routine service call. As Alex began to pack up his tools, Jane felt a reluctance for their interaction to end, hinting at the possibility of future discussions where they could explore their shared passions further. During a brief coffee break, meant to be a small respite from the technical work, Alex poured 2 cups, handing one to Jane. He sighed softly, a more sombre expression crossing his face as he gazed out the window. The casual ease between them allowed a silence that felt comfortable, yet expectant. "I've been going through a bit of a rough patch lately," Alex started, hesitating slightly. "My girlfriend and I split up a few weeks ago. It's been tough, adjusting to the quiet of living alone." Jane took a sip of her coffee, her expression softening in understanding. "I'm sorry to hear that," she responded, her voice laden with genuine sympathy. "I can relate somewhat. My husband travels a lot for work. The house feels so empty sometimes. The silence kind of just wraps around you." Alex looked back at her, nodding appreciatively. "Exactly," he agreed. "It's the quiet that gets to you. Makes you a bit reflective, I guess, about a lot of things." His smile was wistful, the shared understanding between them creating a bond that seemed to extend beyond mere acquaintance. "It does," Jane acknowledged, finding comfort in the shared sentiment. "It makes you think about what you're doing with your life, who you want to be. Sometimes I find myself wondering if the path I'm on is really what I want, or if I'm just following the momentum of decisions I made years ago." Alex leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed, but his attention fully on Jane. "I get that. It's like you wake up one day and realize you might want different things. But making changes, that's a whole different challenge." "Yeah, it is," Jane sighed, a thoughtful frown creasing her brow. "But maybe it's necessary, you know. Maybe we need those moments of loneliness to really listen to ourselves, to make sure our lives are truly ours." Their conversation deepened, the connection between them strengthening as they discussed personal growth and the courage it takes to pursue true happiness. It was a discussion that spanned the complexities of relationships, the pursuit of fulfilling work, and the quest for personal fulfillment. As they finished their coffee, Alex thanked Jane for the talk. "I haven't spoken about this with many people," he admitted. "It's nice to have someone who understands." Jane smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. "I feel the same. It's nice to know someone else is on a similar journey. Makes the path seem a little less daunting." Their exchange marked a pivotal moment in their budding relationship. What began as a casual chat had transformed into a moment of significant personal revelation. They had not only shared a physical space, but had also ventured into the more intimate territory of personal vulnerabilities. This mutual sharing had laid a foundation of trust and understanding, suggesting that their connection might continue to evolve into something deeper, built on the solid ground of shared experiences and emotional support. The air grew lighter as Jane and Alex continued their conversation, a subtle shift marking the transition from deeply personal topics to something more playful and teasing. "You must be quite the hero coming in and saving the day from tech disasters," Jane remarked, a playful twinkle in her eye. Alex chuckled, leaning back slightly as if acknowledging a well-worn role. "Oh, absolutely, I wear my superhero cape under my shirt just for those occasions," he quipped, his tone light but his gaze lingering a moment longer than necessary, a smile playing at the edges of his lips. Their laughter filled the room, easing the earlier intensity of their discussion. The mood shifted, becoming tinged with a flirty undertone that neither seemed eager to discourage. As Jane showed Alex some of her recent designs on her laptop, their hands brushed accidentally over the mousepad. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt of electricity through Jane, her breath catching slightly. Alex seemed to notice, his eyes briefly meeting hers with an expression that mirrored her surprise and curiosity. There was a moment, suspended in time, where the playful banter gave way to something more charged, more intense. Jane felt the space between them shrink, the atmosphere thick with possibility. "I have to say, your work really is impressive," Alex said, his voice a touch softer, his body leaning in closer to get a better view of the screen. "It's clear you put a lot of passion into your designs." His compliment, sincere and admiring, made Jane's heart flutter. She was used to receiving feedback, but coming from Alex it felt different, more personal, more meaningful. As they continued to share the space, browsing through her portfolio, their conversation dipped into teasing again. Alex playfully disputed Jane's choice of colour on a web layout, his critique light-hearted but challenging. Jane defended her choices with mock indignation, enjoying the banter and the way Alex engaged with her thoughts and preferences. Yet, beneath the laughter and playful disputes, Jane felt a growing tension. She was acutely aware of Alex's proximity, the warmth of his presence, and the occasional touch that sent waves of anticipation through her. It was exhilarating but also confusing. She was married, and despite the current distance in her relationship, the commitment she had made was bound by love and responsibility, not just convenience. The flirtation, innocent as it seemed, was threading a needle between delight and dilemma. Jane knew she was treading on precarious ground. The connection with Alex was undeniable, sparking a kind of excitement and joy she hadn't felt in a long time. Yet it also brought a pang of guilt, a reminder of the boundaries she was flirting with, both literally and metaphorically. As they wrapped up their review of her portfolio, the air between them was thick with unspoken questions. Jane knew she would have to confront her feelings, to decide whether this flirtation could ever evolve into something more, or if it should remain a fleeting moment of what could have been. The joy of new connections was now shadowed by the complexities of her commitments, leaving Jane to navigate not just her professional life but the intricacies of her personal heart. Caught in a whirlwind of shared laughter and deepening conversation, Jane and Alex found themselves discussing not just work and art, but their dreams and aspirations. The room was filled with the buzz of genuine connection, the kind that makes you forget the passage of time. Jane shared her long-held dream of starting her own design agency, a vision she nurtured but had been hesitant to act upon due to fear of the unknown. Alex listened intently, nodding in encouragement. "You should go for it," he urged, his enthusiasm evident. "You clearly have the talent and the drive. Sometimes you just have to take that leap, even if it's scary." His words, filled with conviction, sparked a surge of courage in Jane. Here was someone who believed in her dreams, perhaps more than she believed in them herself at that moment. The conversation shifted as Alex shared his own aspirations of eventually teaching technology to kids, bridging his love for IT with his passion for education. "I want to show them that technology isn't just about gadgets and games. It's about making a difference, solving problems, creating new ways to look at the world," he explained with a passion that made his eyes light up. As they talked, Jane found herself more and more drawn to Alex's idealism and his genuine desire to contribute to the world. It was during this exchange, while they were both leaning over her laptop, Alex pointing out potential business models for her agency, that their hands touched. The contact was fleeting but electric. Without thinking, Jane looked up into Alex's eyes, and for a heartbeat, everything stood still. The air between them was charged, full of unspoken possibilities and the weight of the moment. It was then, driven by the tide of their newfound connection and the closeness of the evening, that Jane made a decision that would redefine the boundaries of their relationship. She leaned in, and Alex met her halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was both a question and an answer, a moment of surrender to the emotions that had been simmering between them. The kiss was brief, a fleeting testament to their mutual attraction, but as soon as their lips parted, Jane felt a wave of regret. She stepped back, her heart racing, her mind a tumult of emotions. What had she done? This wasn't just a casual moment, it was a step too far, a line crossed. She had a husband, a life she had built with someone else. How had she allowed herself to get carried away? Alex seemed to sense her turmoil, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Jane, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" he started, but Jane cut him off, her voice shaking. "No, I got carried away. It shouldn't have happened," she stammered, struggling to regain her composure. "You should go. I need to think about this." Alex nodded slowly, the understanding in his eyes doing little to ease her guilt. "I understand. I'll leave you my number. If you need to talk or anything," he offered, his voice trailing off as he wrote his number down, leaving it on the table beside her keyboard. As Alex left, Jane sat down, her thoughts a chaotic swirl. What did this mean for her marriage, for her own sense of integrity? Had her loneliness and the excitement of a new connection clouded her judgment? The thrill of the moment had passed, leaving in its wake a stark realization of the complexities she now faced. In the quiet that followed Alex's departure, Jane sat, the echo of the door closing still resonating through the room. The sudden solitude felt heavy, saturated with the remnants of what had just transpired. The kiss, though brief, had left a profound impact, stirring feelings Jane had not anticipated, and sparking a cascade of questions about her own happiness and the state of her marriage. With the silence weighing on her, Jane realized it was time to confront the truths she had been avoiding. The connection with Alex, though unexpected and exhilarating, had illuminated the vast emotional distances that had crept into her marriage. Her husband's frequent absences, once just a minor strain, now seemed more significant, a symbol of the growing disconnection between them. Compelled by a need for clarity, Jane decided to initiate a difficult conversation with her husband. She reached for her phone, her fingers hesitating as she dialed. When her husband answered, his voice brought a pang of familiarity and a surge of resolve. She took a deep breath and began, "We need to talk about us." Her voice was steady, more confident than she felt. She explained her feelings, the loneliness, the emotional void, and her encounter with Alex, not in detail but enough to convey the seriousness of her emotional state. The conversation was long and fraught, with a mix of defensiveness and moments of painful honesty. Her husband, taken aback by her candidness, listened more than he spoke, his silence often speaking volumes. They discussed their relationship, their individual needs, and how they had drifted apart. It was clear that the path to reconciliation would be arduous, requiring both of them to recommit to their relationship and to each other. After the call, Jane felt a mixture of relief and daunting uncertainty. She knew that admitting her emotional needs and the lapse with Alex was only the first step in a longer journey towards either reconciliation or a re-evaluation of their future together. The reality that their marriage might not survive this trial loomed large. Yet Jane felt a certain peace in having confronted the situation openly. With her emotions still raw, Jane needed to clear her mind. She decided to go for a walk, the fresh air offering a respite from the intensity of her apartment. As she walked, her thoughts wandered to Alex. His understanding and his immediate respect for her decision to step back spoke volumes about his character. It pained her to think of losing his newfound friendship and the connection they shared, but Jane knew that maintaining professional boundaries was necessary, both for her marriage's sake and for her personal integrity. Upon returning home, Jane felt more centered, more prepared to face whatever outcomes awaited her and her husband. She resolved to engage fully in their marriage counseling sessions, committed to understanding and addressing the issues that had led to her emotional estrangement. That night, as she prepared for bed, Jane reflected on the day's revelations and the decisions she had made. She felt a solemn resolve, knowing the road ahead would be challenging, but also knowing that she had taken the first steps towards healing, regardless of the outcome. Her commitment to facing the realities of her relationship, to growing from them, whether they led back to her husband or towards a new path, had brought a newfound strength, a strength she knew would guide her through the uncertainties ahead. The room was still as Jane gathered her thoughts, the earlier chaos of emotions settling into a determined resolve. The conversation with her husband had been one of the hardest she had ever had, marked by raw honesty and painful admissions. Now it was time to prepare for the next steps they had agreed upon, marriage counselling. This decision, though daunting, was a necessary path to mend the rifts that had widened over time between them. She considered the logistics, researching local counsellors who specialised in marriage therapy. Finding the right therapist was crucial, someone who could guide them through their issues with neutrality and expertise. As she browsed through profiles and read reviews, Jane felt a proactive shift within herself, from feeling helpless about her situation to taking control and seeking solutions. While searching, Jane pondered her recent interactions with Alex. Their brief but intense connection had opened her eyes to what was missing in her own life: passion, understanding, and, perhaps most importantly, communication. These were elements she now realized she deeply craved and deserved in her marriage. The thought of cutting off what had just begun with Alex was painful, yet necessary. She understood that to give her marriage a fair chance, she needed to refocus all her emotional energies towards healing the relationship with her husband. Jane reached out to a few therapists, arranging preliminary consultations to discuss their situation and see who might be the best fit for them. She was methodical, approaching this with the seriousness it deserved, aware that the outcome would significantly impact her future. In the midst of her planning, Jane's phone buzzed, a message from Alex. He was checking in, offering a few words of support and reiterating his respect for her decision to prioritize her marriage. His message was bittersweet, providing both comfort and a reminder of what might have been. Jane replied, thanking him for his understanding and kindness, subtly reinforcing the boundaries she was committed to maintaining. That evening, as she sat alone, Jane allowed herself time to reflect on the emotional roller coaster of the past days. She felt everything from guilt and regret to hope and anticipation about the counselling sessions. These sessions, she hoped, would be transformative, providing her and her husband with the tools to communicate better, to understand each other's needs, and to rebuild the intimacy that had been eroding over the years. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be challenging. There would be uncomfortable truths to face, compromises to make, and old wounds to heal. But Jane felt ready, armed with a clearer understanding of her needs and a renewed commitment to her partnership. She was no longer the passive participant in her life narrative, but an active protagonist, seeking happiness and fulfillment. As she prepared for bed, Jane felt a quiet strength. She was making choices not out of desperation, but from a place of deliberate intention. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for tonight she had laid the groundwork for what she hoped would be a new chapter, one of healing, growth, and hopefully renewed love in her marriage. As Alex finalised the settings on Jane's computer, ensuring that the internet connection was now stable and robust, the atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. They were both acutely aware of the need to transition back to a purely professional interaction, the air thick with the unspoken recognition of the line they had nearly crossed. Alex neatly coiled cables and packed up his tools, his movements deliberate, marking the physical act of wrapping up not just the technical job, but also the personal connection that had sparked unexpectedly between them. "Looks like you're all set," Alex announced, his voice steady, carrying a hint of formality that hadn't been there before. "The connection should be much more reliable now. If you have any other issues, just give the service centre a call." Jane nodded, feeling a complex mix of relief and melancholy. "Thank you, Alex, for everything today, not just the internet," she said, managing a small smile. "I appreciate your help and the conversation." Her words hung between them, a gentle acknowledgement of the bond they had formed and the mutual decision to step back. Alex returned her smile, his eyes reflecting a similar cocktail of emotions. "It was my pleasure, really. I'm glad I could help out." He paused, his hand resting on his toolbox as if he were about to say something more, but then thought better of it. "Take care, Jane," he added instead, a simple farewell laden with unspoken thoughts. As he moved towards the door, Jane followed, feeling the need to usher this chapter to a proper close. "Alex," she said as he opened the door, causing him to turn back, "I just want to say I think you're right about the changes and facing things head on. It's what I needed to hear." Alex's expression softened, the professional facade momentarily slipping. "I'm glad to hear that, Jane. Really, remember it's never too late to make changes that make you happy." His advice, sincere and heartfelt, offered her a sliver of encouragement for the road ahead. With a final nod, Alex stepped out, closing the door gently behind him. Jane stood there for a few moments, listening to his footsteps fade away down the hall. The sound marked the end of an unexpected interlude in her life, one that had brought her much needed clarity. Turning back into her apartment, Jane felt a sense of closure. The day had started with a simple technical issue but had evolved into a pivotal turning point in her personal life. The brief connection with Alex had served as a catalyst for self-reflection, pushing her to confront the dissatisfaction in her marriage and her own role in that dynamic. Now alone, she felt a renewed determination to address the issues in her relationship with her husband. The decision to engage in marriage counselling, to openly discuss their challenges and work through them, felt like the right step. It was a path fraught with difficulties and uncomfortable truths, but Jane felt ready to face them, inspired in part by the day's unexpected events and the insights she had gained. In the quiet of her now fully functional home office, Jane took a deep breath, ready to embrace the challenges of mending her marriage. The resolution to work on her relationship, strengthened by today's experiences, was a testament to her commitment to growth and happiness, guided by the truths she had uncovered in the most unlikely of circumstances. In the initial counselling session with her husband, Jane felt a mix of anxiety and hope. They sat together facing the therapist, ready to untangle the web of communication, breakdowns, and neglected emotions that had accumulated over the years. As they began to really talk, Jane realised how much they had both been holding back in their daily lives. The therapist guided them through exercises aimed at rebuilding trust and improving communication. Jane found these sessions eye-opening, each one revealing more about her own needs and the changes they both needed to make to restore their connection. Simultaneously, Jane pursued her passion for digital art more seriously. She enrolled in an advanced digital design course, eager to refine her skills and expand her creative expression. The classes were invigorating, filled with like-minded individuals who shared her enthusiasm for art and technology. This environment stimulated her creativity and provided a much-needed outlet for her stress. Working on projects, collaborating with peers, and receiving constructive feedback helped Jane rediscover the joy in her profession that she had been missing. These new commitments, marriage counselling and the digital art course, although challenging, brought a renewed sense of purpose to Jane's life. She found herself more engaged and present, both in her work and at home. The therapy sessions, in particular, proved beneficial for her marriage. Jane and her husband learned to listen to each other more attentively, to express their feelings without fear, and to support each other's individual growth. This process was not without its difficulties, as facing uncomfortable truths about oneself and one's relationship can be daunting. Yet the effort was worth it, as they slowly noticed improvements in their interactions and understanding. Reflecting on the unexpected events that had led to this point, Jane recognized Alex's brief presence in her life as a crucial catalyst for change. His arrival had sparked a series of realizations about her personal and professional life that she could no longer ignore. While their connection was brief and not meant to last, the impact was significant, prompting her to evaluate her happiness and the complacency that had crept into her marriage. This period of reflection and action culminated in Jane feeling more empowered and fulfilled. She understood that while external events had prompted her to take these steps, the decisions and effort to change had come from within. She was grateful for the wake-up call and was determined to continue making proactive choices to enhance her life and relationships. As Jane looked forward, she felt optimistic about the future. With her marriage on a clearer path and her professional life invigorated by new creative pursuits, she felt confident in her ability to face whatever challenges might come. The journey of self-discovery and personal growth was ongoing, but Jane felt well equipped to continue, knowing that each step forward was shaping a happier, more fulfilling life.